Hello everybody, we're back here and I'm going to give you some pointers on how to sketch some of the objects we'll be painting later. One of the things that you're going to find is that the way things appear with the light hitting an object may make one wall seem a lot lighter or a lot darker than another one. It's the same view of the corner of the still life cabinet with just two different lights on it. So things can change quite a bit. So some of the things that you'll see may be different than another student. But generally with daylight, you're not going to see a really hard shadow on there. And the hard shadow is something that we want to draw and also helps the viewer know where the light's coming from. Fluorescent light's even worse. It's really hard to see with having light coming from lots of different directions. So this isn't a very good image to paint from. So you'll find that a lot of painters work with a spotlight or at least very extreme daylight. And so they might get closer to the sunlight where the sunlight's hitting it directly on the object. But this is what we'll be working on in class. And this isn't extreme. This is more like the way you would light a stage for a music concert. So that this is our lead singer and the spotlight is hitting it very hard. There's a cast shadow that runs off to the side. And what we're going to work on this semester is trying to find ways to see that there's difference in these lights and also mixing those different values and then being able to put them down onto the canvas. So this is a key part. So in general, these are the steps that we're going to go. We'll have an image to work from. We're going to try to do a perspective drawing of it, getting all of the lines of the walls, the floors, the object, and the cast shadow figured out. And I'll show you how to do that next. And then after you do that, there's two walls, one floor, and one object. And each one of these is going to have three different values. It's easy to see in the object. The top is the lightest, the left side is the next darkest, the right side is the next darkest. So 1, 2, 3 values there, that's easy. And then you can probably see it pretty easily on the floor where it's darker on one side, lighter on another side, the cast shadow on the floor. You might even be able to see here along this wall where we have a darker area down below, a little bit lighter, and a little bit lighter as you go up. But this is probably the wall that's the most challenging. And what we want to avoid is having a flat color moving from left to right. If we have just one color moving from left to right, the wall's going to look like it's perpendicular to our vision. And if we make it have a value, what's going to happen is it's going to look like it's leaning back and going back into space, just like my hand is now. So you may have to work really hard on some of these to see the different values, but that's your job as an art student this semester. So what I did with this first one is I used a posterized filter on it to help you see the difference in the values because they're a little bit more broken up, not quite as smooth as before. So what I want you to do is I want you just to do a perspective drawing and just try to play around with one of the objects that we have. So you'll see here's one of our first paintings. It's achromatic, A meaning not color. So it's black and white. And then the first thing we'll do is we'll do a line drawing of it. And then what we want to do is try to have that be our foundation for which we'll paint later. And you'll see that the student has done that over here on this painting a little bit later, but we're just worrying about sketching for today. So what I'll do is I'll go through each one of the items, and you may want to come back to this video later as we go on. You may only want to watch so much at a time and save some of the more difficult drawings for last. So we'll start out with the most simple planes, mostly verticals, objects meeting at right angles. And what I'll do first is I'll draw this out with a gray marker, and then I'll come back with another color to help you see how it gets cleaned up. Now with your pencils, what I'd like for you to do is don't feel like you need to get a ruler out and have a perfect line every single time you draw something. This is sketching and you can work a little more lightly with it. So what you do is you want to try to figure out where your basic object might be. So I've got a cube someplace in this space right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm kind of make sure I've got the right size. I'm going to clean up some of these lines All the verticals are going to be going straight up and down. And it doesn't meet flat on the floor. This line here is at a slight angle, if you'll see with my marker right there. So I could take that angle over here and I would want to do something about the same. So that angle's there. This angle goes across here like this. And then what happens is right above it, there will be a similar line. So this line and this line will be parallel, this line and this line will be parallel. And then this line and this side over here will be parallel. And this line over here will be parallel. So that gives us our cube. And then the wall and the floor meet at a slight angle. Now if I were to go through this cube, it looks like it meets right about there. Comes off to the side like that. And then up above, the line comes up like this. So you'll have a composition that's already drawn out in your lab book, sort of like what I'm drawing right here, and you'll be responsible for drawing what's inside of it. But we're not finished because we also have to show where the cast shadow is. The cast shadow is always going to be really important to us. That's going to help things look like they're illuminated. And so here's the cast shadow. And where the cast shadow on the floor and the wall meet, these are usually two different colors. Even though that may look exactly the same to you, because the floor is darker, this part of the cast shadow is going to be darker than this because it's a shadow on a lighter wall. It's getting a little ahead of us, but so here's the first drawing that you'll have to do. And when you're all finished with your sketch, you can erase away and kind of clean up areas, but this is what you'll want to end up with. You don't need those dotted lines that are in there. And if yours doesn't look as good as this, don't worry about it. Just as long as we have three sides that we can see where the wall and the floor meets, we can see where the wall and the wall meets, and we can also see where the cast shadow might go up on the wall. And you don't fill anything in. This is just a contour line drawing. Now let me back up just a bit and explain to you a little bit about how perspective works. So when we see an object, like say this coffee cup, if we're looking at it straight on, about the way you're looking at it in the video now, what it's going to appear is that the top of the cup is flat, cup comes down, the bottom of the cup is flat, and then there's a handle that comes off to the side. But generally what artists try to do is show space. They want it to not look flat. And so you're going to want to have it as if it's leaning just a little bit so we can see inside of it just a bit. So rather than this, if we can see inside of the cup a little bit, and when it lands. So what we have here is a cup that looks pretty flat. What we have here is a cup that looks more dimensional. The same thing with a block. You might be able to see a block looking like this, but if you can see down on the top of it just a little bit, what you might end up with is a block that looks a little bit like this. So this is definitely more three-dimensional. This is only looking in at this first plane right there. So whenever you have a chance to do a drawing and work on a painting, make sure that you move your eye around just a little bit and up just a little bit. So what you'll also do is you'll see a side and then you'll see the top. Avoid having things be flat, either as the cup or as the block. Okay, so I hope that helps just a little bit. Practice this and you'll get better. Just get a cereal box or take a look at your flat screen TV and just try to move at different parts of the room and kind of see how you might see it slightly differently based on different perspectives. So that might be your flat screen TV. This might be the cereal box that you're working on in the morning. Okay, so back to what we're going to be doing in the class. We've got the Same assignment as before, but now our block is just a little bit taller. So you do all the same things that you did before. You kind of rough out about where it should go in the space. Then you can sharpen up your lines. There's an edge, there's an edge, there's an edge. Up, up, and we see the top a little bit. Line here, line here. We see a cast shadow going across, but we'll go ahead and draw where the floor and the wall meet. Where the wall and the wall meet back there. But the cast shadow runs across the floor like this, hits the wall, moves up almost to the middle point, a little bit higher than the middle point, comes back down. So this will give us wall number 1, wall number 2, the floor, and our object. And we'll be able to see 1, 2, 3 values on the object. Probably the front is lighter, if you can see that. So we'll have 1, a slightly darker area here, 2, and where the cast shadow is third value there. The walls are just a little bit darker towards the corner, lighter out here, darker here. So you might have your lightest area, your next lightest area, your next lightest area. And then here's the one where we have a little bit of a challenge. It looks lighter here, gets a little bit darker, and it gets a little bit darker. So you have 1, 2, 3. So after you've drawn each one of these, you want to make sure that you have 12 values total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 values will be what you'll be looking for. Okay, let's try another one. And you can come back to any one of these and practice some more. So this one is nearly as tall as the second one, but it's much skinnier. So what we'll try to do is be able to make sure this width right here is a little bit shorter. So again, I want to kind of rough out about where it goes, not worrying too much about getting it perfectly right. Barely see just a little hint at the top there. And then we have a cast shadow going across. It hits the corner where the floor and the wall meets, where the wall and the wall meets. And this cast shadow comes out a little bit, over the wall, and up, back down. It comes out behind. Doesn't line up with the corner, but just a little bit higher than the corner right there. So again, we have a composition. It's about the size of your lab book composition. And we can sharpen up. Here's the back edge, the bottom edge, the right-hand side, the edge in the center, the line that comes across makes the top of it, right hand edge and the left hand edge. And then where the floor and the wall meet, the floor and the wall meet, where the wall and the wall meets. And then our cast shadow. And then you would have something drawn like that in pencil for this one. Okay, let's try our next one. Now our next one mixes the ideas that we had with the coffee cup in the box. So now we have two shapes to work with. So I'm going to look about how big to make these. It looks like the cylinder is about twice as tall as the box. So I want to make sure that I end my cylinder low enough. And I put my box on top of it. And I'm not going to worry too much about exactly where it's touching and how it all fits together. I'm just going to rough this in. Where the floor and the wall meets. and where the wall meets. Now, remember, we don't want to see this as a straight line, so I'm just going to draw through this and kind of try to make this ellipse go straight across. Don't let it go up on one side or up on the other side. Try to think about being straight across, same amount of space above as below. Okay, so there's our ellipse on the top. We have this curve at the bottom because we don't want it to end up being a flat line. It tapers up a little bit, and you can have that taper a little bit or a lot. It's not, you can come out further, but whatever you do on this side, make it come out the same distance on the other side so it's symmetrical. Now, my box is a little bit of a mess here, and so what I'm doing is I'm trying to double check here to see where this corner comes down and touches the ellipse, and this line comes down and touches the ellipse there, goes across, looks like it's down inside of it just a little bit, and then this line and this line are parallel, this line and this line are parallel. And then we have our cast shadow. Now it's kind of, because the light's coming straight down, kind of comes out a little bit here and around, and then up the side of the wall just a little bit. So that's where our cast shadow will be. So we clean this up a little bit. Here's the edge of our composition. Here's our box. Here's the top of our cup. Here's our shadow. And where the walls meet the floor. Now, as we go into some of the materials, first in our drawing, we still only want to worry about the object. So don't worry about all the reflections on here. Let's just get the basic objects. And in this one, I would probably break it down into a couple pieces. So before, we have two pieces here. We have the block and the cylinder. In a sense, we've got another sort of curved area. We have a curved area down here that we can call that the foot, and a curved area up here, we'll call that the neck. And then we have a handle. So a little more complex, but it's not too hard to draw. I'm going to start out with the belly of this water pitcher and just make it round. And then as I come up to the neck of it, I'm going to be symmetrical and have the left and the right sides come up the same way. So a circle, the neck. And then down here where it sits in the ground, it would roll over if it was just onto a round end like this. So we have to kind of end it a little bit of the way that cylinder was ending before. So it's just a little line that comes out here like this. When we get to the top, we see that the pitcher's top comes up. We can see a little bit of the back side of it. And then we'll just extend this out just a little bit more so that can pour out. When we get to this side, we have to have a handle. So however much detail you want to put on this, you can. And again, we have our floor and our wall meeting. Now, in this case, we will kind of draw in some of these shapes that are on here. And that's pretty simple in that the floor is being reflected onto the pitcher. So there's going to be a little bit of a suggestion where that line is. Where the floor and the wall meet, there's like a little bit of a line on there. Same thing with the blue and the yellow on this side. And then some of the reflection of the room that's coming at us is right in here. And there's another patch of yellow floor that's up in there. I'll spend more time with this when we do the painting demonstration, but this is the idea. Composition. Okay, Now, what is the most important thing that I forgot? Didn't draw the cast shadow. So just make sure that you always are looking for where that cast shadow is. In this case, it kind of just runs across the floor. I'll explain more about this when we do the painting demo, but this is the idea. So here's our neck, the body, the foot, the body, up into the handle. Wall, and the cast shadow. All right, one last one. This is the last painting we'll do, and it will have certain challenges, but I know that by the time you get here, you'll be able to do this really well. So if you're starting to see shapes now, and you're starting to see perspective, you're doing a good job. So we can get started with this the same way we did the water pitcher, by seeing the circular or spherical body of the vase. There's sort of a triangular form that comes out. The opening at the top is not going to be a straight line, but it's going to be an ellipse, right? And then I'm going to smooth out some of these connections. And this one doesn't have quite as pronounced of a foot on there. You might not even see it if you just weren't thinking that, you know, it would fall over if there wasn't one. So I'm just going to make just like the slightest suggestion of that foot that's on there. And I'll help this vase look more believable. We have our wall and our floor meeting, and we have our walls meeting back here. Now we have an additional object that's in here. We have this cylinder, this piece of pipe, piece of copper pipe that comes down here, something like that. There are a few more things in here that make this a challenge to the artist. And we want to make this look like it's glass. And one of the ways we make it look like it's glass is we show what it does. And it holds water. So the fact that the colors you're going to be seeing through the top in the air, they're going to look one way. And then when there's water, these colors are going to look different. And where the water and the air meet, it's called a meniscus, this coin-shaped object that sits right here on the surface. So that's important to look for it. And it's going to do something similar as the lid or the top of the vase up in here. This is the meniscus. And when the pipe comes through, you're going to see that the water magnifies the view of this pipe. It makes it bigger. And where we see the meniscus edge, it obscures the pipe in a spot. So what happens is this pipe will come down and it's going to rub against the edge of that vase, and then when it hits the water, it's going to almost disappear for a second. Draw this back up. And again, because we want to not make it look flat, I'm just going to put the slightest hint that there's a curve on there, so it looks like a tube and not just a flat piece of metal. Here's where it hits the meniscus, and then on the other side of it, it's actually jogged just a little bit. It's not taking the exact same angle that's been refracted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it coming down, and I'm going to make sure I draw it just a little bit bigger so it looks like, it helps to make it look like there's water in here. Now this is pretty much all you need to do for the drawing of the objects. We'll suggest the shadow that's underneath here, and then also the way the shadow is coming from this pipe up above. But this is pretty much the drawing part of this assignment. So if you can draw this, we'll be able to paint it when the time comes. So to finish this up, we have our composition. Here's our pipe coming down into the vase. The vase overlaps the pipe. Inside, we see it going into the meniscus, the surface of the water. And through the lens of the water, it makes the pipe look a little bit larger. And this is about all that we need to do for this. Okay, so that's your sketching lesson. Do the best you can with it. You can do this on another sheet of paper if you wish. You can also refer back to this on the days when we go and actually do those paintings. So you'll see that the student has her paintings in here, and so she would have sketched that out first. So we'll be doing the same. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand a little bit about how we're going to be sketching out our subjects before we paint them. Give yourself a little bit of a chance to think about this and put this together. And I'll see you with the next video.